Welcome to the Year of the Movie podcast, the podcast where we talk about movies from the year of the movie 2023. We're your hosts, and we started this podcast because 2023 was quite the goofy year for movies. You had 65.
You did.
80 for Brady.
That's true.
Strays.
Yeah?
And more. And so, we were just like, hey, we should talk about it. This is goofy.
And no one else is. And we have to.
And that means...
And that's what makes good journalism.
Niche. If you like this podcast, please consider supporting us on Patreon, reviewing, rating on any podcast platform you might be listening on, subscribing on YouTube, giving us a like, ringing that bell.
Any bell.
And following us on Instagram.
Yeah.
What are we talking about today?
We're talking about a fever dream action film that follows Boy, a deaf person with a vibrant imagination. When his family is murdered, he is trained by a mysterious shaman to repress his childish imagination and become an instrument of death. Boy Kills World.
Classic.
Classic Boy Kills World.
Everyone remembers this movie.
Yeah. I also just processed the spoiler that's in the synopsis. But anyway, what were your first impressions when you heard about this movie?
That it would probably be like a fun movie. And I like who's in it. And that's kind of my first impression.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah. I definitely remember watching the trailer when it came out.
Yep.
And just thinking like, that's wild. It looked fun. It's like, I don't know if it's going to be a good movie, but it looks, that level of self-awareness where it's like, it's so over the top that it's like, it knows what it is at that point. Kind of. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't actually know. But, I was into it, basically, when the trailer came out. Yeah. Speaking of the trailer, it mostly focuses on the this televised murder called The Culling, which is basically just like, it kind of gives it a Hunger Games vibe. And then it sets up that Hilda van der Kooi took charge of the city by force and controls them with televised public executions. And then it establishes the revenge backstory with the main character. Also establishes the main character is deaf and mute, and explains why his internal monologue sounds the way that it does. And then it also gives a bit more structure to the plot than I think the actual movie does in the final edit, and there are some reasons why that we'll get to eventually when we get to production facts. Should we talk about the trailer, or the cast? We just did that, yeah.
Bill Skarsgard as Boy. Although he plays an adult version of Boy.
He plays Boy all grown up.
Yeah.
He plays the boy that kills world.
Famke Janssen as Hilda van der Kooi. Jessica Roth, right? As June 27. Michelle Dockery as Melanie van der Kooi. Brett Gelman as Gideon van der Kooi. Sharlto Copley as Glenn van der Kooi. Yayan Ruhian as Shaman. Andrew Koji as Basho, Isaiah Mustafa as Benny, Cameron and Nicholas Crovetti as Young Boy, Quinn Copeland as Mina, and H. John Benjamin as Boy's voice.
We follow Boy, Hilda van der Kooi, mentioned she's the big bad. All the van der Koois are related. They all come up.
It'd be really funny if they weren't.
Yeah. It's a coincidence.
It's like 5 van der Koois and they're all just different.
Yeah. But then Cameron and Nicholas Crovetti are twins. They're both stand-ins for the flashbacks to Young Boy.
One of the Crovettis is Ryan from The Boys. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting to me because once he said oh, that's the kid from The Boys, I was like, oh yeah, I recognize him now. And then learning that they're twins is like, oh, interesting that it's just the one of them that's in The Boys.
Yeah.
But, child actors is what a wild world that I don't want to look into. Yeah, H. John Benjamin. He's got a recognizable voice.
If you don't know it, you
Yeah.
do. It's Bob from Bob's Burgers, or Archer from Archer.
Yeah. There was there was one review that I read that was like it said H. John Benjamin as the voice or like internal monologue of Boy, and it was like he was Yoda in Family Guy's Star Wars specials, so I was excited.
Man, if anybody from the Family Guy Star Wars special is in a movie, you best believe I'm watching.
I'm in line. Just like, man, he's Bob from Bob and Archer from Archer, and you're like, that's my Yoda.
That's my Yoda right there. I don't care about Frank Oz.
Yeah.
H. John Benjamin till I die.
Yep. So he's got some credits to his name. Yeah, we'll go through the plot now.
Okay.
Yeah. There's a lot. Anyway, we'll get through it. Okay, so we open on Boy, who is buried under dirt, eating stink bugs through a tube. There's dramatic voiceover telling us that he's training under the shaman to destroy Hilda Vanderkoy, who is a dictator over a dystopian society. Hilda is also responsible for killing the boy's mother and sister. Boy reminisces on growing up. His mother was a revolutionary against Hilda, and he and his sister Mina were very close. They made fun for themselves when possible in a stressful environment, planning out their perfect magical plan to live a better life and playing an arcade fighting game. In his memory, Mina is also fearless, flipping off a statue of Hilda by showing the back of her hand to the statue. She's basically like doing like a reverse high five. And then she says that's because it's giving her the middle finger 5 times at the same time, so it's even worse. The boy is also deaf and mute, and his tongue was removed and his ears were damaged when his family was killed. And his internal monologue is the voice of the arcade games announcer. There is a training montage as the shaman puts Boy through various trials, training, and having hazy drug sessions. Flash forward to Boy grown up, and he constantly hallucinates his sister Mina with him, her like still picturing her as a young child. Every year, the culling takes place as a televised event, killing enemies of the state. Boy and shaman go to the city one day, and while there, the authorities, led by Gideon Vanderkoy and the show host Glenn Vanderkoy, they show up to get 12 people together for the broadcast that night. Glenn quickly loses control of the crowd, leading to a riot, and the security force ends up having to kill everyone. The lead security agent killing people is a woman with a helmet covering her face called June 27. Boy decides he's waited long enough, and now is the time to go after Hilda. Boy hides himself in the trunk of a car and infiltrates the location where they're prepping for the culling. He sees Melanie Vanderkoy speak with her husband Glenn and brother Gideon, stressing the importance of the broadcast. They don't have 12 people for the show, and Melanie tells them they need more. Boy and his imaginary Mina find a room with people held prisoner, forced to work for Hilda. Boy is spotted and starts killing all the guards. There's a huge action sequence. In the process, he frees a man named Basho, who promises to help Boy get Hilda. The two work together. They injure Glenn, who tells them every year before the culling, Hilda has a family dinner in their mansion. While talking to them, Glenn realizes how terrible things are with Hilda in charge and decides to help Boy and Basho, but then Basho accidentally kills Glenn. That is all in the trailer.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the like slipping and dropping the thing on Glenn. It cuts away before, like, you see his skull get crushed in, which the movie does not.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
I feel like I must have watched, like, a teaser trailer or something, because, like, I remember the trailer gave very little from what I watched.
Yeah. Yeah, so Basha and Boy escape, and they head to the resistance cell that Basha is a part of. When they get there, they find only Benny. It seems that everyone else in the cell was killed, but we don't really know because Boy lip reads, and he can't understand what Benny is saying. So whenever Benny speaks, it's just kind of like gibberish, yeah.
And they show, like...
They show what Boy thinks is happening, like, based on the words that he picks up from Benny.
So it's just like, bread man shooting the... taco, and like it cuts to a bread man shooting a taco.
Yeah. Which that stuff is pretty good.
Yeah.
So Boy doesn't understand the plan as they explain it to him, but it's clear he's now part of the team and they're going to take out Hilda together. His voiceover makes it clear he's happy to be part of something even if he doesn't know what's going on. Imaginary Mina is skeptical of everything. The three disguise themselves as staff and get into the mansion. Boy stops to eat macaroons with Mina's encouragement and gets distracted by how good they are. He gets back on track once he catches a glimpse of Hilda heading to dinner. He cuts through the kitchen staff, like literally cuts through them. He's got a cheese grater. It's nasty. He makes his way to the dining room and standing behind Hilda cuts off her head. He stops to do a victory pose before Gideon and the guards show up. Gideon explains that everyone at the table is an actor and this is a trap to catch assassination attempts like this one. Gideon sends June 27 to fight Boy. They fight and are pretty evenly matched. Boy knocks her helmet off. Imaginary Mina distracts him by saying June 27 is pretty, and June kicks him off a balcony. Boy is captured and interrogated by June 27 about the shaman's location. Gideon sends her away and talks to Boy more. He says he doesn't like the Coling either, and they ran out of enemies of the state years ago, but Hilda is very paranoid and won't be satisfied that she has control until the shaman is captured. Gideon admires Boy's passion and says, "Let's see how far that tenacity takes you," before his sister Melanie comes in. She says they need to get Boy camera ready, and he's going to be part of the Coling. Guards take Boy to the culling location. Along the way, Melanie tells her aides that since Glenn is dead, then Hilda has to be the host. They're all nervous about her hosting, and Melanie reminds them to keep guns away from Hilda. The show starts. Hilda is hosting right next to Boy, and she looks at him with some recognition. She goes off script with a paranoid rant about enemies being everywhere and pulls a gun out. Melanie quickly ushers her sister off camera, and the culling, sponsored by Frosty Puffs, begins. There are serial characters who start killing the enemies of the state while the studio audience cheers. The boy is tied to a pillar and realizes that Gideon slipped him a scalpel. He cuts his ropes and joins the massive fight. He's grabbed by some mascots and a goat character approaches him with a massive hammer. It looks like he's about to die, and then the goat hits the person next to Boy. The goat head comes off and it's Basho inside. Benny also comes out of hiding and they all fight back. Basho says everything went according to plan, and Boy still doesn't know what Benny tells him. There's a massive fight scene with Benny, Basho, and Boy against the culling sponsors. Melanie tells Gideon to fix this and send in the security force, and he refuses. She pulls a gun on him. Melanie joins the fight herself, killing Benny. Boy manages to defeat Melanie and ties her up in front of the camera. He then kills her with the camera, so, pushes it into her face. Basho is also injured but continues on, helping get Boy to the next hallway filled with guards. Boy kills them all while experiencing a series of flashbacks of his life, and when he turns around, Basho has also died from his injuries. Boy turns the corner expecting to fight Gideon, but he's already on the ground bleeding out from Melanie shooting him. Gideon gives Boy his security pass to help him move forward and says he can kill him if he needs to. Imaginary Mina tells her brother not to since he helped them. But Boy tells her he doesn't need her and his sister is dead. He kills Gideon and gets in the elevator to Hilda's bunker. Hilda tells Boy on the elevator comm system that guards will kill him as soon as the doors open. He holds up a picture that his sister drew that he always carries with him, his voiceover saying this is all for her. Hilda turns the comms off. When the doors open, June 27 is standing there with guards. She tells Boy that Hilda will see him. Boy walks through the bunker to Hilda. He sees paintings on the wall and sees himself as a child with Mina sitting next to their mom, Hilda.
What?
What?
Oh my god.
What?
What a twist.
There are more flashbacks as Hilda explains the shaman turned her son against her as a revenge for killing his family. Boy realizes his memory of his family dying was actually shaman's family dying, and Hilda had forced her son to kill them as revenge for killing. She blames shaman for the death of her husband. Yep. They don't really explain farther than that. So shaman managed to get away from the attack. Boy ran away sobbing and then was found by shaman later. The shaman almost killed Boy, but instead took him, brainwashed him with the drug sessions to forget who his mother was, and made him deaf and mute. Hilda also reveals that June 27 is Boy's sister. What? Boy doesn't reveal the shaman's location, and Hilda gets frustrated and slaps her son. She apologizes, but then tells June 27 to kill her brother, and says there's nothing of the boy they remember inside him anymore. June 27 throws a few punches at Boy, but before she kills him, he holds up his hand in the same flip-off motion she did as a kid. June 27 then turns around and kills Hilda instead. The guards go after the siblings, who now work together to kill everyone. There's a massive gunfight, bloodbath. Boy and June 27 make it to the elevator. She says she never stopped looking for him. They have a quick, quiet moment before the elevator stops and starts heading back down the bunker again. The doors open, the two get out, and the shaman is standing there. Boy signs to shaman that he got what he wanted and the Vanderkoys are all dead. He signs back not all of them and wants June 27 dead. There's an intense fight with shaman almost killing June and Boy, but Boy barely manages to overpower him and shaman dies. Boy gets his sister and they stumble away together, his voiceover saying no one can tell them what to do. There's another flashback to the siblings as kids, and Mina asks her brother at the arcade game if he's with her. He says, always. There's a post-credits scene of the siblings at the kitchen table and what looks like the ruins of their childhood home. They pour out 2 bowls of Frosty Puffs and eat together in silence. And that's the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Anything right off the bat?
It's a lot of fighting.
Mm-hmm.
Most of this movie is fighting. Within, like, at least 5 minutes, you start the fighting montage or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, it's...
Or at least you see blood within the first 5 minutes.
It's pretty instant.
Yeah.
And then fight scenes are at least 5 minutes long.
Yeah. Yeah. Skipped over a lot of that because, like...
Yeah.
You know, just they punch each other, you know.
There's stuff that I'm remembering now,
mm-hmm.
but by the time the movie was over, I forgot that it happened because there was so much fighting.
Yeah.
So,
mm-hmm.
if you really like fighting movies, that
yeah.
over-the-top violence, John Wick
genre
fighting movies. This one is comedic
mm-hmm.
John Wick, basically.
Yeah, there were a couple other action movies that I saw it compared to. I thought of Monkey Man just because we had watched it so recently. Yep. And like it's a similar thing of like there is a enough of a plot to give an excuse for why all of the action shots are happening. There were comparisons to John Wick. Some of them weren't, or like in reviews, comparing it to John Wick. Some of them weren't super fair reviews. Because they were saying that John Wick did it better, but, like, how can you... Like, John Wick is considered one of the perfect movies of its genre, so, like, what do you expect? Saw those. And then I also saw, compared it to the Kingsman movies. And Argyle. Again, unfavorably, all across the board.
Yeah, I can kind of see it compared to Kingsman.
I like those movies, so it was just like...
I love the Kingsman movies.
Yeah, but that was from like a 1-star Roger Ebert review that was like... I've got some bits from that review later, but basically it didn't like any of them, and it's all got vague criticisms and...
Didn't like any of the Kingsmans?
It didn't like any of the Kingsmans or Argyle or this movie. So it was just
I can see arguments made for Kingsman 2, The Kingsman, and Argyle.
Mm-hmm.
But the first Kingsman movie is a solid movie.
It is.
All right.
Yeah. I think it's fair to say this movie is either for you or not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're squeamish when it comes to violence,
mm-hmm.
it's not for you.
I don't think either of us are squeamish with violence. There's like...
No, there are certain times where I'm like, eh.
Yeah, or like if something gets a little too real, then I'm like, ugh. Like if you think about the reality of it, then I'm like, oh, that's nasty.
They make a lot of this look real.
Yes. This like several times out loud we went, ooh.
Mm-hmm.
Because like the cheese grater is rough.
Yeah. The cheese grater, like he's attacking people and all he has is a cheese grater. And so like he'll dodge an attack and then put a cheese grater on the person and then scrape their...
Just pull.
Yeah, so this is going to be some graphic conversation. They'll just pull and then bits will come off.
People scream.
There was one where like he puts the grater in between the body and armpit and closes it and then pulls it out. That one's rough.
That's what makes me...
There's one on the face And what makes it even worse is that this movie does a fantastic job with their sound design.
It's got incredible sound design, and it's
everything
terrible.
in it sounds so real.
Yeah.
In a way of like, oh, I didn't know that that's what that would sound like, but I believe it.
Yeah.
And the worst to me is their bone sounds, and I don't mean when the bones break, because that's like whatever. I'm pretty used to that at this point in movies.
For action movies, for sure.
But there is a part where someone...
It's the shaman fight.
Yeah. They have a dagger, basically, and carve down an arm, and you can hear it scraping against the bone. And that's the part that was, like, the worst, I think, for me, at least, in that movie, because it's like, I can feel my arm.
It makes you think about how fragile bodies are.
Yeah. I think the sound design is the best part of the fighting in this movie.
It's the best technical... Like, the choreography is great, obviously. Yes. The cinematography does a decent job of, like, showing it. Sometimes the camera movements are, like, it's too much, where it's hard to keep track of what's going on. But, like, besides the choreography itself, the thing that really sells it in the final edit is the sound design of just, like, every single punch lands extra hard. Every single, like, bone crack and terrible, terrible body noise is made even worse. Yeah. Like, they sell all of it. I don't like the word squelching. Like, it, if you think about, like, what has to happen for that noise or, like, that term to be applicable, I'm like, that's not great. This movie's full of squelches, and that's how dare you and good job.
I think over the top realistic violence, I'm getting tired of it, just in media, because it's just everywhere. Yeah. And it's not in a way of, like, I dislike it or I'm, like, against it. It's just I'm bored of it in the same way that people are getting bored of Marvel movies.
I'm kind of desensitized to it.
Yeah. I think when you do it in a over-the-top, unrealistic way is when it gets fun. The Kingsman movies. Like, that first one for sure. Yeah. Over the top, not realistic.
Polite Society to a certain extent. Yeah.
Turbo Kid is one of my favorites, and that one is it's violent, but in a, like, indie film. We don't have the money to make it look realistic, so we're going to make it look goofy. Yeah. And I don't know, that, like, is... There are tones in this movie, like when the boy is imagining what Benny is saying because he can't read Benny's lips, where I'm like, oh, this could be an over-the-top, goofy movie. Yeah. Because there are goofy parts of this movie, but it doesn't quite go into it, which did lead me feeling like the goofy parts where he's like, oh, a bread man, or chopping off farmer's foot or whatever, where I'm just like, it's hard... And they flashed to those so quickly that like I didn't really have time to sit in that before it went back to more just fighting.
Yeah, the quick camera movements are consistent. So even when it flashes to like the boy's interpretation of what Benny is saying, then it's like, is that a dodo? I can't fully process like what I'm looking at.
There was a dodo on screen for like 3 seconds, and it's like, oh, haha, that's a dodo. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, there are. I would say I really enjoyed watching this movie. It's not super cohesive in a lot of ways. And like, yeah, the comedy aspect of it, the way that it comes across in the final version is like both helps and hurts it, where like it helps with the over the top violence and makes it like, if you lean into the ridiculous a little bit, then it helps, and it helps make it stand out from like the oversaturation of violence. But then also the stuff that like is funny, like those flashes to what Benny is saying, or like the boy's internal monologue, then it doesn't really let that have a beat on its own and let you process the funny thing before it just moves on to more punches.
Like the first fight of boy versus the cops, basically. One of the cops just won't stay down. Yeah. And it's played off as like a kind of a goofy thing because the guy is crazy.
It's when he rescues Basho.
Yeah, and Basho is like, Scott has problems.
Yeah, he's got issues.
Yeah.
So he just like, for like two quick scenes, they show what are basically vapes, like people using vapes, and Melanie uses it as she's talking to her husband, and it's kind of just like a set piece so she can blow smoke in his face, and that's like,
yeah,
you're supposed to think like, intimidating businesswoman, which she is, and then like blows smoke in her husband's face. She obviously doesn't respect him.
Yeah.
You get that in that one thing. And then Scott or Dave, whatever that guy's name was, then he uses it in the fight scene multiple times
as like a
stimulant.
Yeah.
To like,
and it never comes into play again in the movie. Like no one uses it again, but it is like this gets him riled up. It's like a quick acting drug. It's basically an inhaler.
It looks like an inhaler,
where they do like, and then the smoke comes out.
Yeah.
And it's like to the point where the boy breaks his jaw, like Scott's jaw, his character's jaw, and he's like, "Yeah, I did it." And then he turns around and Scott's back up, and he like gets his jaw back in order, uses the inhaler, and then he's like, "Yeah," and like just keeps laughing during their like fighting, and it's just like, okay,
yeah,
and then it just.
Like
there's no explanation.
There's a lot going on in that, like the inhaler thing. He's rescuing Basho. He's kind of unsure if like he should trust him. This dude just won't stay down. And then they've also got H. John Benjamin's voiceover, who's like, and it starts out with him saying round 1 fight, round 2 fight, and then the next time the guy gets up, he's like, this guy has issues. Like he just drops the like video game voiceover thing, and it's a lot for like your first action sequence.
Yeah, and with the choreography, I could tell right away that they put a lot of thought into the actors' choreography, and they definitely got creative with the camera choreography. But a very important aspect about fight choreography in movies is the camera choreography. Yeah. And from the first fight scene, it was pretty obvious that you weren't going to be able to see everything in the fight that you would want to see.
It was a very specific perspective.
And like there were things where I was like, that's a little cut off. I don't feel like it should be cut off. Just go a little wider. Yeah. It wasn't like...
It's not sloppy.
It's not sloppy, and it wasn't really doing the thing where it would, like, cut to a different angle. It would sometimes cut to a different angle, but it was just, like... It was moving around too much in a way that was just, like, distracting from the actual fight. Yeah. Like, in John Wick, the camera moves around a decent amount, but it's more just, like, following the fight or moving around in the room to show a different perspective of the fight.
It enhances the fight.
Yeah, and then this one is real fast, real quick. It's a lot of drone, like flying around, and I think that's part of the problem of like some of it gets cut off because it's like they can't super fine tune it. Yeah. I don't really like drone footage fight scenes.
In movies?
In movies. Yeah. Like, there's one in The Gray Man with Ryan Gosling. And it's, like, real up top. And it's, like, a drone is just, like, flying all over the place. And it's just, like...
That's within, like, the first 15 minutes, right? Because that's all you watch in that movie.
Yeah. And then that's when I was like, no.
That's enough of that. Yeah. I think the soundtrack works pretty well. There's not really standout tracks or anything, but that is something that helps enhance the fight sequences. Yeah. There's one moment specifically that stuck with me where it's when Boy is fighting June 27 and it starts building and the song starts slower and it picks up as their movements start moving faster, and like that worked together really well. No standout tracks that I can think of, but it was just like, it was good. Yeah. How do you feel about the voiceover in this movie?
I thought it was an unnecessary component, honestly. So, Alex Skarsgard was in a movie called Mute.
Yes.
I feel we've probably talked about it on this podcast because I think we watched it, maybe.
Yes.
It's not a 2023 movie.
No.
But
it's directed by David Bowie's son?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Mute is Alex Skarsgard plays a mute. And it's another
dystopian kind of
action. He has to save someone or complete a mission
yeah.
type of movie. It's not as shoot 'em up actiony. There's a lot more plot in that movie.
Yeah.
And development and like find stuff out and whatever.
It's a much slower paced version
Yes.
than this. Yeah.
But he doesn't have a voiceover. And they do plenty where it works, where he's mute and he gets it through. This one, I get, it's a different style. There's some stuff that they're trying to convey with silly dialogue. So he has a distinguishable voice. I don't think H. John Benjamin, or John H., but whatever. H. John, right?
John H.
John H.
H. John. H first, John second.
Yeah, H. John. H. John Benjamin's voice was the right voice.
I kind of agree. I think I really like him.
Yeah, he's a great voice actor.
And it's a good voice. I think like when I watched the trailer and he was like, he literally says like, I picked the internal monologue of the last voice that I remember, this video game announcer. And it's just like, I don't think he quite has video game announcer voice. So it like, I know H. John Benjamin from Bob's Burgers and Archer.
Yeah.
And I guess now Family Guy Star Wars special.
Well, come on.
That's his top credit. I like to go a little bit more niche with my references. What can I say?
IMDb most known for
Yoda.
And actually, his IMDb has nothing else on it. He doesn't take credit for anything.
His bio says H. John Benjamin is Yoda.
Yeah.
So I know him as my Yoda, and so like that is like all of those roles are more comedic. And this is also, not that this isn't comedic, but I think you need the internal monologue to be the straight man, to really sell it as, like, not being in on the joke as much necessarily. Because, I don't know, his delivery, like, he is just he's more comedic. I feel like you need someone, not necessarily like Morgan Freeman, but you need like the In a World trailer guy.
Yeah. I could also see it being he does just remember his voice as a kid, and it's the kid, it is a boy narrating everything.
Yeah. That would be interesting.
Like, especially because he's called boy.
Yeah.
He doesn't actually, he hasn't really grown up.
Yeah.
Not that he's, like, an immature child, but, like...
His dreams are still the same, where, like, he's got that drawing that's, like, magical, perfect land. All he wants to do is relive the memory of eating cereal with his sister. And then he gets to do that in the post-credits scene. And, like, they're both incredibly covered in blood, and, like, the house is in ruins and everything. But, like, yeah, he still has the same goals.
And, like,
when he eats the macaroon, then he's like, oh my god, because it, like, he's been eating bugs and stuff in the wilderness, and then, like, this is the first time he's had flavor in years.
So I feel like having the actual kid's voice could have been interesting.
Yeah.
There was also a point where there wasn't narration for a while.
Yeah.
And then it comes back, and I was like, oh yeah,
this did have a narrator. Yeah,
that is a component of this movie, and I think part of it is, like I was saying, you don't need narration for a mute.
Yeah,
like, it isn't always needed. Because like throughout most of the movie, even during the fighting sequences, H. John Benjamin was saying something.
Yeah.
But, like, at the end, during, like, the big fight and whatever, it was just the punching sounds and the cutting and whatever.
Yeah, it's kind of like, the version of the original Blade Runner where Harrison Ford narrates, and it's like, it's jarring in some moments. And like, the studio wanted that version because they didn't think that the story was very clear without it. And I don't know, I think it's just a fully personal preference thing on how much you want to hear about his internal monologue, or like if you think it adds another layer of jokes to it, or if you think that it's over the top, because it, like, reviews and just audience reviews that I saw, it was pretty hit or miss. People either were already fans of H. John Benjamin, so they were just like, yeah, love it, love to see him in anything, or some people were like, this was trying too hard to be funny, and then it didn't work for them.
I do think if I wasn't an H. John Benjamin and Yoda fan, then I don't think I would have really liked most of.
If I didn't know him as Yoda, then I would. Yeah.
But it's good to hear Yoda's voice.
Yeah, as a true fan. Yeah, I think it both. I think it kind of relies on the voiceover as a bit of a crutch, and just like it uses it so that like Boy is communicating with the audience the entire time, but he doesn't really communicate with anyone else. Like,
there was one moment where like he's freeing Basho. Basho throws him a shotgun. The voiceover, or like the narration from H. John Benjamin goes, "Thanks," and then Basho goes, "No problem."
Yeah.
Where I was like, oh.
Do other people hear it? Like, he also nods, or like...
Yeah. Because like that would have been a thing where it was like, if their narration is talking to real life people, and then people do respond in a way, then I probably would have been more okay with that, because it is just showing like, oh, this goofy fantasy, he can't talk, but like he can be like, and then people are like, no problem.
Right. Like, if it had leaned into like, because this is obviously video game inspired, or like video game adjacent, if it had leaned into that a little bit more and made it like, it's hard to say like if this movie was less realistic because it's the way that it is, but if it was less realistic with that and like leaned into the goofiness more, then or like, because there's some moments when it's the voiceover and imaginary Mina talking to each other, and like in that way, then he's just communicating again all internally, but it's like there's still a back and forth with that, and then but it's just like he never, like in Mute, like that Skarsgard like writes stuff down, and like he is able to talk to people. Boy just signs occasionally with Shaman, and even that, their version of signing is just like
real strips down.
It's grunts, and then like you get the idea of a hand motion that's cut off by the camera, so you don't see like if it's actually sign language. It's real stripped down. You never see him like write to other people. He just kind of nods and moves along with everything. So like, I don't know, I would have liked to just see him communicate more with other people. Yeah.
I do want to say Bill Skarsgard's performance was very good.
Yes.
And very funny. Because there was a part where it's Basho and Benny talking, and they're in the foreground, and it's like foreground, a couple feet background, Bill Skarsgard. Basho and Benny are out of focus, and they are talking to each other, and the boy is watching the two talk. He's in focus, and he's watching the conversation, and he's smiling because he's like, oh, I'm a part of a team. And he's like really excited, and like they're talking a plan out, and like Bill Skarsgård the whole time was just like really into it. He's just like really like really listening. And I'm just like, it's a small thing where he probably didn't need to give as much. But he was, and I was like,
it's like some moments they lean into the realities of like if this person was actually deaf going through everything and like mostly understood the world through lip reading, then like you have to have that person facing you in order to understand what they're saying. And then sometimes it just kind of ignores that. Because, like, if we're going with the idea of, like, this is all from Boy's perspective, and whatever he understands is how we understand things, like with how Benny just speaks gibberish, then, like, there is a moment where he's being dragged. It's when he's, like, going to be put in the culling. He's being dragged across the floor. He's looking down at the floor, but then Melanie is walking in front of him, and she's talking to her aides, and, like, we, as the audience, fully understand that she's talking about Hilda is paranoid, but she has to host this. Like, so he's not seeing them, so, like, he shouldn't be able to understand them, but we still understand what they're saying because, like, we need to for the plot to move forward.
It does the thing that, like, we've mentioned on a lot of these episodes, if it doesn't quite know which way it should lean.
It doesn't set its own realities of the world.
Yeah.
I kind of think that they didn't need to make the boy deaf if they wanted to lean into, or if they wanted this to be quote unquote realistic.
It gets rid of the Benny thing.
But it gets rid of the Benny thing, and I kind of wonder if they did that a little bit to separate from Mute, because that is a Skarsgard on a mission of revenge who cannot speak. So, like, you make it a little bit different by, he's not just mute, he's also deaf. But, you know, do whatever they want. It's not like it breaks my brain looking at this. The cheese grater broke my brain, but this doesn't. I also think, again, we've mentioned there's a couple of moments where the voiceover stops. There's a moment when it's Boy and June 27 in the elevator after the fighting. He is looking at her. They're, like, kind of, the adrenaline is leaving their bodies. They're just kind of, like, panting. She says, "I never stopped looking for you." She is talking about how, like, she always wanted to find the shaman and kill him because he took her brother away from her. And, like, he turns away from her and he just looks down at the ground. So, like, and so then her voice fades out and we don't know what she's saying. And then there's no voiceover. There's nothing. It's just silent. Yeah. Well, he's just like, you've just seen June kill their mom. He's just found out the truth about his family. He's just found out about the shaman and everything. They just killed a bunch of people. And he's just kind of processing, I guess, and then not listening to his sister. And you don't know what he's thinking, really. And then he turns it back to her and she's saying, like, I wanted all of them to suffer and they have. And I don't know if it's like he's coming to terms with the reality of who his sister is, because we watched her massacre a bunch of people, like a bunch of innocent civilians, as she was introduced. So I don't know if that's what it's supposed to be, but I don't know. That was just like a kind of interesting moment to me.
Yeah. Because
I don't think we see imaginary Mina again. We see Boy sees himself as a boy in his final fight to Shaman. But I don't know if that's like he's fully letting go the version of his sister.
Probably.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. I was cool at the moment because it was the first time we were just like sitting in what happened.
Yeah. I was cool with it. I just wish that like the before and or after was more immediately clear of like why right now, besides the fact that it's logistically convenient because you're sitting in an elevator. Yeah. The imaginary Mina too sometimes wasn't super clear when she would show up, because like sometimes, or like it seems like I couldn't tell if she had always been with him or if it's just suddenly he's an adult, like through that montage. Suddenly he becomes an adult and then he seems startled to see Mina.
Yeah.
And it feels like that's the first time that this has happened. And then she's just kind of there. She's kind of supportive of him, of just like, we're doing this now. I live in your brain. But then she's never really clear as like she shows up as his moral compass, or like he's losing himself as he kills more people, or like that kind of thing. She's just like, she doesn't want him to kill Gideon.
Yeah.
And that's about the most influence that she has. And then he says, "You're dead," and we never see her again. So, I don't know. I liked the little girl, though. She was nice.
Yeah.
Cool. Is there anything else we want to talk about before production facts?
I think we're good to move to production facts.
Cool. So this movie premiered at the Toronto International Film Festival September 9th, 2023, and it had a U.S. theatrical release date of April 26, 2024 by Lionsgate Film and Roadside Attractions.
So this is the first time that we're talking about a film that had a theatrical release.
Separate from 2023.
Yes.
Yes.
But it was still released
It counts.
in 2023.
We watched it on Hulu, and Hulu says 2023.
So
Yeah.
take it up with Disney.
It's got an hour and 51-minute runtime, and it's rated R, shockingly. It's got a 59% on Rotten Tomatoes with a 72% popcorn meter, 47 out of 100 Metacritic, a B- on Cinema Score, and then a 71% from Post Track, with 50% of audiences saying that they'd recommend it. So again, this is either for you or it isn't. And it's not for critics, for the most part. So the Rotten Tomato critic consensus says, bolstered by Bill Skarsgard's all-in performance, Boy Kills World may offer just enough action thrills to offset its thinly written characters and predictable plot.
I wouldn't say there's just enough action thrills when the whole movie is action thrills.
Yeah.
But
I kind of agree about the predictable plot, because the whole time we were like, they were showing the flashbacks of Mina, and then they showed June 27th, so we were like, so she's his sister, got it. Like, just because it's the only other woman in the movie and she's hiding her face.
Mm-hmm.
And then she took her helmet off and Mina was like, she's pretty. So I was like, oh, maybe she's not the sister and this is a love interest thing, because we had seen so many flashbacks of Mina as a child dead.
Mm-hmm.
And then it turns out we were right the whole time, and also Hilda. So nothing super surprising. And then that 1-star Roger Ebert review that I mentioned earlier, it talks about half-baked media criticism. The movie doesn't trust the audience to feel a feeling, which is a line from the movie when Gideon is yelling at the actors who are playing the family. And then you can't draw meaningful conclusions from the plot twists that happen. Like, the plot twists are just kind of there. It doesn't really impact the messaging of the story, which, I don't know, feels like it's asking a lot for what this movie is. But I get it. Yeah. And then the other reviews spotlight the action sequences, obviously. No one seems to be a huge fan of the director. They're saying that, like...
He hasn't really done much.
No, he hasn't. We'll get to there. But it's saying that, like, it could have been even better than it was, or it could have sold itself even better if it was in, like, more capable hands of just, like, letting the action speak for itself more, giving the plot a little bit more cohesion. Just like, tightening up things and getting rid of loose ends and stuff. That,
to me, feels more like a script problem.
Yeah. But... and then the narration is pretty hit or miss with critics and audiences, like we've mentioned. The budget for this movie was an estimated $18 million. That is the average budget from Hammerstone Productions, meaning the film needed to make between 20 to 50 million to break even.
But it did not.
So we'll get to the earnings in a second, but the producers were disappointed at the earnings, partly because this is reportedly the biggest budgeted film to come out of South Africa. They shot partially in South Africa, and then fans online blamed the lack of marketing for this movie. One of the producers from Hammerstone was like, man, we really wanted this to be an even bigger splash, because, like, even with the marketing budget and everything, like, you know, all that stuff, and then fans were just like, what marketing? No one heard about this movie. And then it was apparently heavily promoted, or the film was apparently heavily promoted with Barstool Sports, because they were, quote, targeting gamers.
Barstool Sports was what?
Barstool Sports is one of their big things. Yeah. And apparently, because, like, I looked up, I just Googled Boy Meets World budget. then reading
Kills World.
yeah, whatever. Both of them actually. Boy Kills World
Just
budget.
Curious.
Yeah. And then like a whole Reddit thread from Barstool Sports came up, and I was like, why? And then just reading into that, and it costs like at least $5,000 to get advertisement from them on one of their episodes of things. So it's just like, if they were heavily promoted on there, then people were estimating that it was like around $200,000 budget, or like advertising just with Barstool.
All right.
Who knows if any of that is true?
Yeah.
Again, it's all from Reddit, but they were targeting gamers. That part seems true. So those box office numbers, it earned $3.3 million.
It did it
Worldwide.
Wait, it didn't do it.
It didn't.
Sorry, I did the math. They didn't do it.
It didn't do it. 2.6 million of that came from U.S. and Canada, and the rest is from other territories. It was released alongside Unsung Hero and Challengers, and that was projected to gross between 2 to 3 million in its first weekend, and it debuted at 1.6 million. So it underperformed.
Yeah.
I don't think they had huge expectations for it because Challengers, but yeah, underperformed. And I don't.
Challengers.
Challengers
Oh,
is
the Zendaya.
yeah, tennis. Yeah, I don't know streaming numbers because I meant to look them up and then I didn't. So it's under the radar. I think we can say that.
I mean, I have a Reddit, and I'm on it. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's why I've seen it. But like, I do remember advertising for it.
Do you remember how much, or like?
No, I just saw it a couple times, I feel like.
Okay. Because like it seemed like Barstool Sports people were like,
I'm not on Barstool Sports.
Yeah, they were like, man, just I was interested in it, and then I just kept seeing the trailer, and I stopped being interested. So I don't know what happened there, but so like I was aware of the movie because we had seen the trailer and we were actively looking for 2023 movies, and then we had our film played as part of a film festival in a theater, and there was a poster for Boy Kills World up while we were there. So I was like, oh, it's out.
Yeah.
And I don't think it was anywhere near or playing near us, so we didn't try and go see it or anything. So I was aware of it, but I didn't know, like, I didn't look into what specific advertising. I wasn't targeted in any of their advertising that they did. Yeah.
Let's keep going.
The production timeline. So in 2016, according to the director, Moritz Moore, he shoots a proof of concept trailer in Berlin with a few friends. No script exists, but basically they just decided, like, let's get together and make a trailer for a movie for something that we would want to watch.
Yep.
And then in 2018, according to Wikipedia, this might be different from the proof of concept trailer, but there is a Boy Kills World short and pre-visualization reel for a feature version of the story that's created. And that is shopped around and at some point catches the eye of Sam Raimi and Roy Lee of Raimi Productions. They were impressed with it and agreed to produce. Nithaba Pictures came on for financing, and Hammerstone Studios were attached to produce. Orion Pictures were also attached at one point, but then dropped out because of COVID. So it could have been an Orion Pictures, but they made Bottoms instead. And then it seemed that they were shopping the trailer / short around to producers with the intention of developing a script with the whoever would be attached. So like, they just had this trailer as a proof of concept, and they're like, let's build a story around it. So I feel like that alone explains a lot of the cohesive issues and the thin plot stuff. It is a great trailer. Like the trailer, the official trailer for this movie is very impressive.
It feels goofy to be like, let's make a trailer for a thing without a story so that we can make this thing. And it feels more like you should get into fight choreography. Like,
Well, yeah.
Or act like just specifically like get into being a DP for action or something, instead of like let's tell a whole story based off of how we want to see fighting.
So I watched an interview that this director did with, I think it's called 2Fab or something, and she was asking him, like, is there an element of pressure of, like, because this is how you made your first feature, like, is this how you have to do all of them? And he was explaining the process and, like, saying, like, it would be cool if this is how I have to market my movies for the rest of my life, is, like, make a cool short version and, like, that speaks for itself, basically, and then you build something else around it. And, like, that sounds interesting and, like, a fun way to do things is, like, you have a proof of concept and then you can expand the story in a bunch of different directions. Like, that's interesting. It also stresses me out as a concept because he also went on to say that, like, they had this short or this trailer, they would show it to people and they'd be like, that's really cool. Do you have a script? And they would say, no. Can you help us make one? And then people said no.
Yeah.
Because, like, what do you mean? You have to have something to back up this one cool thing that you did. So it worked, obviously, this one time, but I wouldn't recommend that method for if you have a thought process like mine. Anyway, so October 7th, 2021, the film was announced with Bill Skarsgård, Samara Weaving, and Yayan Ruhian attached, and then Isaiah Mustafa joining later that month. January 2022, Andrew Koji joins the cast, and then Jessica Roth replaces Samara Weaving due to scheduling conflicts. And then February 14th, 2022, filming begins in Cape Town, South Africa. March 2022, most of the rest of the film cast is announced, and then August 2023, Ludwig Forssell is announced as the composer. That's the major stuff that I could find on Wikipedia, and then, it got into TIFF, and we watched it eventually. So it's got a few nominations and one award. They're all from the Golden Trailer Awards for 2024. It has nominations for Best Action, Most Original Trailer, and Best Sound Editing. And then it was the winner of the Don LaFontaine Award for Best Voiceover, because H. John Benjamin, his voiceover is in that trailer. Gotcha. It makes sense with the origins of the story that all of their awards are from the Golden Trailer Awards. This movie is continuing with our accidental recent trend. It also does not have a tagline, which is interesting to me. There's, like, one version of a trailer, it's like the red band version of the trailer that says, like, revenge is deaf and mute. Like, that comes up in the graphics. It's like, I guess that's the closest thing you get to a tagline for this movie. This feels like something that could have a cool tagline, and I was kind of surprised, but oh well. So this is the first feature film from director Moritz Moore. He is born and raised in Germany. He attended UCLA, and then he made his short, all of that fun stuff, etc. He has a story by credit for this movie along with Arend Reimers, and then the screenplay was by Arend Reimers and Tyler Burton Smith. Arend Reimers, I think. He writes on video games. He did shoot, now I can't remember. He's done a bunch of stuff. No, not him. But he's also from Germany, so maybe that's how they know each other. Tyler Burton Smith, he does video game stuff. He's the Alan Wake series. He's big in that. Gotcha. And then Child's Play. He's done a bunch of horror stuff. So yeah, the story team makes sense for this, again, with the video game stuff. And then Moritz Moore's upcoming credit that's listed on IMDb is a sci-fi short, so I'm wondering if he is doing the same thing again of make a short, turn it into a feature. There is a previous version of the film. You mentioned this after we watched it. a previous version that has Bill Skarsgård's voice still as the internal monologue. And then there's a trailer with this version that's now pretty hard to find online. And also apparently the original short film concept had the voice come from a cigarette commercial, and the voice was similar to Sam Elliott's. I feel like Sam Elliott is a closer voice than H. John Benjamin for the way that we're thinking of this.
Ram.
His internal monologue just keeps naming car brands.
Strong in the force are you. Dodge Ram.
That's my Yoda. I don't know how I would feel about the Bill Skarsgård voiceover version.
I want to hear it.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. I think the other options of, like, you have this like, voice trailer actor guy, or your idea of having a small child do it, I think either one are, unfortunately, maybe stronger choices. Bill Skarsgård, to me at least, doesn't have a super distinctive voice. So...
Yeah, but I do feel like he could give.
Yeah. He's a good actor.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then just some rapid fire IMDb trivia. In the Blu-ray special features of this movie, it revealed that Mina's character named herself June 27 because that's the date that she lost her brother. I kind of figured that's why.
Yep.
Yeah. And then the twins who play the young version of Boy, they also play a young Alexander Skarsgård in Big Little Lies. So there's so many
That's interesting.
Skarsgård
I was going to say, like, it's a good casting for Bill Skarsgård.
Yeah.
I don't know if I think it's a good casting for Alex Skarsgård.
Pete Davidson was originally considered for Boy. That's all that it says on the IMDb trivia. I would love to know so much more about that.
Yeah.
This movie, in the movie and the trailer, they really highlight Bill's abs.
He's ripped.
Not that Pete couldn't get ripped, but I don't know if he would want to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have so many questions about that. And then Bill Skarsgård's character in season 1 of Castle Rock is also credited as the Boy, so he's typecast. And then this is the second time that Bill Skarsgård and Famke Janssen play mother and son. The other was 2013's Hemlock Grove. So
neat.
Fun facts. There were a lot of colorful descriptions of the film with press and reviews. Examples are like bloodiest film of the summer, it's an action orgy, it's uniquely deranged, all of that fun stuff. Director Moore's favorite description was calling Bill Skarsgård a deadly Buster Keaton. I like that.
Yeah.
And then there is a spin-off video game, Super Dragon Force Punch 3, that is based off of the in-universe arcade game with the same name. It was released April 24th, 2024. I don't know anything else about it. It kind of looks like a Street Fighter knockoff. I don't know if that's what this game is. Or like in the movie, it looks like a Street Fighter knockoff. Mm. And then there is a spin-off animated TV series that's in development as of April 2024. It's written by Mario Carvajal and Judd Fitzjohn. I don't know anything else about them, but it's not the writers who are attached to this movie. And then it seems like it's based off of the game that was released and not the movie.
That's weird, but all right.
Yeah. So like it's not based off of the movie because the game comes from the movie, sure. But it focuses on Super Dragon Force Punch 3. So I hope that exists. I would check it out. So we'll see. Yeah. We'll see what happens if that's still in development. But that's all I got. If we want to get to our ratings.
Our ratings. Mm-hmm. We rate out of 4 with 5 options. 0 out of 4 is oh no. 1 out of 4 is it was a movie. 2 out of 4 well made or enjoyable. 3 out of 4 enjoyable and technically good. 4 Oscar worthy. I gave it a 2. Mm-hmm. I feel like that's pretty self-explanatory. I don't know.
Yeah.
I talked about how I feel about the movie in this podcast. Mm-hmm. So if you skip to just our review and you're like, why are you giving it a 2 out of 4? Go back and watch the podcast.
I give it a 3 out of 4. Mm-hmm. It was enjoyable. It was technically good. Hits all of those things. It is it lets itself down with the story that it tries to construct. It's not super fleshed out.
Yeah.
I have many questions about the universe that it's set in. Like, just so everything about Hilda, like how that happened, all of that fun stuff that the movie doesn't even get close to talking about. But like for the stuff that is there, then 3 out of 4, it ended and I was a little bit unsatisfied, but I was also like, there's a lot going on into this that I can respect and appreciate. And if I'm using the We Have a Ghost 3 threshold, then I think it meets that threshold.
I don't think it's better than We Have a Ghost.
I don't think it's better.
I don't think it's on the same level.
I think
We Have a Ghost is better, and I think it's not better than Cocaine Bear, which I do think we gave 2s.
We did give Cocaine Bear 2.
Yeah.
Interesting. I'm going to stick with 3, but I'm going to think about that.
I do think Cocaine Bear...
Maybe we should re-rate Cocaine Bear.
...is our threshold. Yeah. I think Cocaine Bear's a 2. But our average now for this is 2.5.
And that feels fair. Yeah.
And another movie that we've watched recently, we like to talk about that, The Bike Riders.
Yeah.
We watched The Bike Riders.
We did.
I think really the only reason we watched The Bike Riders is because it's filmed in Cincinnati, and that's where we live.
Yeah. Yeah. It was
shot well.
I
thought, like, everything looked nice.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
It's kind of forgettable.
Yeah.
In like a surprising way. Not that it was like, I don't know, if it wasn't shot here, I wouldn't have watched it.
Yeah.
It's not really typically for me. It's kind of an old car guy movie, and I'm not those words.
But if you like Tom Hardy doing a goofy little voice,
Tom Hardy does the goofiest little voice,
then this movie's for you.
Yeah. There were good performances in it.
Yeah.
Michael Shannon is there.
Michael Shannon is great, as always. He's the best part of that movie, which is typical.
Yeah.
for Michael Shannon.
And then Jodie Comer is trying her hardest. She's really carrying that movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Austin Butler
is around.
Is there.
Yeah.
If he, that as far as that character goes, if that character was played by anybody else, then that guy would no longer be cool and mysterious. He would be boring.
Unless they got another like tall, pretty boy.
Yes, that's why he's cool and mysterious, is because he's hot. And it's like, it's, you know, the unfortunately named Steve Buscemi test, where like a guy does something that's either creepy or romantic, depending on if the actor who plays him is attractive or not. And this guy is either boring or mysterious, if it's Austin Butler or not.
Yeah.
And I wasn't into it. There's nothing really that you learn, the way that the movie is constructed, there's nothing that you learn about the character that I'm like, oh, this is why she's obsessed with him.
It's just because he's hot.
Yeah. And that's not enough.
Well, follow us on places like we said at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Leave questions and comments, and we'll respond to them on the VHS podcast.
If you have any movies that you want us to watch, then
for 2023.
Or 2023, or you can recommend others, but it's gonna take us a second to get there.
But for now, we will see you next week.